Yo, what's going on, people, and welcome back to the channel. As you can probably hear from the starting sample, we're going to be making like a vintage bouncy dark guitar. I'm going to show you all the process that I did between of like layering each individual sound. If you haven't already, follow my Instagram, that's going to be on the screen. I'm going to be shooting out weekly samples that are free and to anyone that just wants to be on the list. But yeah, let's just jump straight into this and I'll show you how I made this sample. So starting this sample, I wanted it to be like 85 BPM slowish sort of thing, and then I could just up tempo it in the end if I wanted to. So I used this whirly like electric piano from Omnisphere for the first sound. So the first thing I did with these chords is just use triads. They're just minors, there's nothing too crazy, and then just use the root note as another bass layer just to give extra bass and warmth to the overall sound. And as you can see here, I've got like strummed effects of just going up in the D minor scale. It's nothing too crazy, it's just to feel nice rhythm and just give a nice tone. You can probably hear it's half timed, so this is what it sounds like without half time. So with that, it was just too fast. I wanted to give it that nice dark gloomy texture. So first thing I did was just add this reels. I put the flutter up crazy. I just wanted to give that weird sound that just gives that nice vintage like just waviness to the whole sample. Then again half time, and then just a room reverb. EQ'd out a lot of highs and lows just to make it very like saturated and lo-fi, and just took out a little bit that I didn't like. So once that was done, I've got the base of the chords and I wanted to make a bounce. So the first thing I did was use this Evolution Modern Nylon. It's called the Full of Peace preset, and all I did was just follow sort of the notes of the chords, but I just made like a bounce and layered them, so it sounds like this. What's important about this is the velocity that gives it that nice natural guitar sound. And as you can see here, there's like a key under the key and it's layered, it's going over the top. It gives it like a sliding effect. I don't know why, I think it's just the way the plugin's made, but it just gives it a nice cool natural sound. So fitting in with that dark gloomy sound, I used this Valve compressor, and I didn't really compress it that much. I just give it that nice wow flutter, and I just turned down the lo-fi. And then again, a subtle reverb, nothing too crazy because I want it to be very minimal. I want it to be like a dry sort of guitar. Next after that, I used the Rickenbacker bass to fill another rhythm. So I use this bass notes that just feed off the original chords. And what I like about the ending of this guitar, it gives it a nice natural rhythm and goes up, and it sort of like denominates from the original of the guitar, acoustic guitar that's just going down. So it just gives it a nice cool bounce off it. So for that, I use this Corey Wong as I always use, and I just took out the highs, when it'd be very low in the highs, and then I just took out some lows so it wasn't too overcomplicated in the bass part. Then I put this bassist cassette on it. Just gives it a nice warmth, and then I EQ'd a lot of lows to just get rid of that rumble, and then a lot of highs so it wasn't just cutting through the mix as much. So once that's done, I wanted to add another like cool gloomy acoustic layer. So this time I've got the Evolution Modern Nylon again and use this Spanish tinge. These chords just fit in perfect with the first acoustic guitar that sound like this. Very subtle, but just give it that nice bounce. And all I did on this was just add a default cassette. That's just literally it. Next, I added another guitar, the Evolution Jazz Archtop Rhythm and Blues preset. And with this, I turned on the wah just to give it that nice cool effect. And that wah is very nice and slow and fits in perfect with the tempo of the whole sample, and just goes and fits in the pockets of the counter melodies. So I added this June 6 chorus, a bit light, it doesn't have to be too crazy, but just gives it a nice airiness of the sample. It's well controlled to give it a nice vinyl effect. A subtle room reverb as always. After that, I use this Mellotron flute that sounds like this. Fits in perfect and just is subtle in the background, adding to extra textures and layers. So with this, just use the regular reels that I always like to use. A flanger to just make it a little bit more thinner and just fits in perfect. Then a shaper box to just make it left to right. It just fits in the pockets and gives more space for the sample to breathe. And then I put a spring reverb on it, and I've put the reverb up all the way because the preamp was just a little bit too harsh, making it like a harsh sound. It was just too overcomplicated. With a flute, you want it to be as natural as possible. Then the width just average and the decay average, and just not too crazy because I want it to still have that nice flute element to it. So after that, I added the same chords from the first electric piano into another electric piano, but I've just taken out little parts of the chords and keys just to give it a little bit more space and just fits in. And then I've up pitched it so it's a little bit higher, fitting in them like frequencies a lot better. Using that higher sound just fits in more perfect, lets it stand out from the other sounds, and where I've created a lot of room from using other tones, it just fits in perfect. So again, I just use a reels and a room reverb as usual. Then I've used this mix rack, and it just brings in the brightness of the whole like bell, just perfect. Just changed some little bits, EQ'd out a little bits that I didn't want to be too present. And then I've used this trimmer just to bring it to life a little bit and just fits in the mix perfect. Then for the bridge section where I just take a little bit out and just feed in other parts, I've used this B3 organ, the same chords as the first piano, and it sounds like this. And what I like about this sound, it has that nice vibrato sort of sound and just fits in perfect, sort of sticking to that texture of the dark atmospheric sound. And all I've done in that is just add this sketch cassette, and that's pretty much it. Next I added this dupe 8 just texture in the same bridge part, just to give just different sound and different listen. And then all I've used on that is just this chorus cassette just to give it a nice texture. And then lastly, I've just added my own vocals that sound like this. And all I really did with the vocals is the reverb and delay, but I use this flangers as well just to give it a like nice thinning out. And then lastly, I just added this perk loop that I just EQ'd out. Once I've got the sample together, I just brought it down by 3 semitones, as I always really like to do. And all I've done with the master is that is just add another flanger, and then I've EQ'd little bits out here, as you can see. Then with this virtual mix rack, I see I just boosted little bits, took out little bits of like the low end. That's because when I've just brought it down by 3 semitones, a little bit more of a different mix needed. And then lastly, I like to use this ultra maximizer just to boost the volumes. It just makes it more loud. Make sure your samples are always loud. It just so much better when you're listening to a louder sample. You can hear more, and there's just so much more of an element to it. And then together, this is how the whole sample sounds. So yeah, that is the whole sample together. It come out beautifully, just how I wanted it. If you are new around here, you know what to do. Subscribe, comment down below if you want to see any other videos, leave a like so I know that you like these sort of videos. Then finally, if you're not following my Instagram, it's going to be on the screen somewhere, and then I'll see you in the next one, people.